Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at the AWS Systems Manager parameter store. Now, we haven't actually covered AWS Systems Manager in any of the associates, so this might be new to you, or you might be very experienced with it. You might do this at work day in, day out. A lot of people do use Systems Manager in production. Systems Manager is just what it sounds like on the tin. It is a way of managing AWS EC2 fleets at scale. So if you wanted to go in and do some patching or run a command across 1,000 different instances, you use Systems Manager, in particular the AWS run command, which we're going to have another lecture on probably in the next lecture. Now, first thing I want to cover off though is parameter store. So I want you to imagine the following scenario. So you work for a bank, you're a systems administrator, and you need to store confidential information such as users, passwords, license keys, etc. You need to basically pass this information to EC2 as either a bootstrap script, or it could be using CloudFormation, or it could be using Lambda or whatever. So how would you do this? Well, the answer is with AWS Systems Manager parameter store. So let's go and jump over to the AWS console and have a look at this in action. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. So where is AWS Systems Manager? Well, it's actually under EC2. So just like EBS or load balancers, it's a function that sits under EC2. Doesn't have its own section. You'll be able to find it by scrolling all the way down here, and you can see we've got Systems Manager services. So we've got things like the run command, the state manager, configuration compliance, etc., etc. And then if we scroll down under the shared resources, we've got our parameter store. So let's go ahead and click on that. Now, if you've never used it before, you're going to get this splash screen. We'll go ahead and get started. Essentially, we create a parameter. We're going to store sensitive data in there, and then we're going to be able to access this parameter across a whole bunch of different services. And you'll see the services in here. So EC2 run command, EC2 state manager, CloudFormation. You can do it using Lambda, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and get started. So in here we've got our name. So this might be our license key. Let's call it Adobe license key. So let's assume we've got some form of Adobe software on here, and we need to pass it this license key when we're installing. So my license key for Adobe. Now in here we've got different types. So we've got string, we've got a string list, and we've got secure string. With string, we can just enter any data in here. Within string list, we can basically enter multiple values, and we separate them using a comma. If you want this information, you can just click up here. And then secure string actually encrypts the data using KMS, and this is where we would store our sensitive information. And even if you type it in here, you can see it's not revealed to me. So if you have other system administrators, you can store all your keys and stuff in here, and they can go and use this and reference this, but they won't actually be able to see the keys themselves. So it is very, very secure. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter in a random one, hit create parameter. You see the parameter was created successfully. If you do get some weird error messages, it's probably because you put a space in the name. Just go back and take the spaces out. And then you'll be able to see here, we've got my parameter. So it's called Adobe license key. It's a secure string type. Notice that I can't go in and actually view the value. Actually, I can here. Look, there you go, show value. So you can see the value inside the console, but it depends on your levels of permission. So, if people didn't have access to EC2, for example, they wouldn't be able to go in and see these keys. And then we can pass this attribute over to CloudFormation. We can pass it to Lambda, etc. And if you want to find out how to do that, just head over to the documentation. We've added it as a resource in the course. You can go down and see about Systems Manager, working with Systems Manager parameters. In here, you can see how you can actually organize them into hierarchies, how you can create them, which we've just done, tag them, and then working with different versions. They give you lots of practical examples, and you'll be able to see how to set things up, using Lambda, how to reference them in CloudFormation, etc. To be honest, you're not going to be quizzed on that in the exam, so it is beyond the scope of this course, but you definitely need to understand at a high level that you can use AWS Systems Manager as a way of storing sensitive information. So, what are my exam tips? Well, if you've got confidential information such as passwords, database connection strings, license codes, etc., could be usernames, whatever it is that's confidential, you can store this inside SSM parameter store. You can store values as plain text, or you can actually go in and encrypt the data using KMS, and then you can use this data by referencing the values using their names. So the names do need to be unique. And you can use this service with EC2, with CloudFormation, with Lambda, with EC2 run command, etc. So be aware of that. You might get some scenario questions where you've got exactly that kind of scenario where you're working at a bank or something like that, and you need to store sensitive information. Keep in mind that AWS Systems Manager is probably going to be a better place to store it than putting it in a plain text file in S3 and giving it public read permissions. So if you do see that, just be aware of what it is at a high level. So that's it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.